Here we go. This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss those memories and dig into the movies, albums, shows, and more. I am Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Gif.
And here we are. We're doing it again.
Again? What is this?
Again
38
and
now?
again. Every week. It's like it comes out every week. It's like you can't stop us. It's like a freight
It's
train.
amazing. I
Unbelievable.
don't
We
know.
are
It's something
inevitable.
like 38. It's like late 30s in our episodes.
Yeah. 30. I don't remember either. Anyway, we did a preview last week. 2 weeks ago, I guess. So last week we talked about TV. We're going to move into the movies for the next 2 weeks. And our topic for tonight is The Breakfast Club. An
I love
obvious
it.
classic from the mid-'80s, from 1985. And again, if you happen to be with us from the very beginning, we did talk about this movie, but I think that will only apply to probably a few people, and even they probably don't remember it. So
Not
We'll
even
try.
Gifford was with us that far.
No.
we'll try to improve on whatever we did back then tonight.
Awesome.
And this was picked by Dave,
We're experts now.
so that is why we're doing this movie. But we all, I think, have a lot of good memories and feelings about this movie. So let's start by saying kind of what do we remember about this movie when we first were introduced to it? Do you remember seeing it? And when would that have been? We were 9 years old when it came out, so maybe not right away. How about you, Pete? You said you had a story.
Well,
Tell
not
us a
really
yarn,
a story.
Pete.
It's not really a story. Yeah, all I was
You called it.
I
a
just came
story.
prepared. No, I've got verbiage of anecdotal evidence, I guess. No, I don't remember actually seeing it for the first time, but I remember seeing it when I was younger. Maybe I was probably 10 or 11 whenever it came out on VCR tape back then.
VCR tape, the
and
common name for those.
That's right, videotape. But I remember not liking the movie that much the younger I was,
Interesting.
because
See, this is a
it really
great story.
It's. I think I may have oversold it. But the reason is because when you're a younger kid, this is a different kind of movie and really isn't geared towards younger kids because there's not much that really happens. It's not a lot of action or a lot.
True.
It's about the characters, and it's a really good movie. The older that you get and the more that you become a teenager, you start to appreciate and kind of understand what's going on. And then it's just a movie that gets better and better as you get older. And then you start to appreciate the acting and the character development and the interactions and what's going on. So that was just kind of my initial impressions of the movie. I was kind of, I remember being bored with it the first 2 or 3
Really?
times I saw it when I was younger.
Well, it's interesting you say that because my favorite movie as a kid in the 80s was a different John Hughes movie. Can you guess? You guys know, right?
Vacation.
Was it
No. One he directed.
Oh, when he directed. Planes,
Ferris
Trains, and
Bueller?
Automobiles.
No, okay, whatever. Sorry. 16
all right.
Candles.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, of
16
course.
Candles. And I watched that movie more than any movie in my life in the 80s. My brother and sister, I mean, we were all obsessed with it. So I loved that teen movie. And so when this came out, I mean, I'm only 9, but I might have already seen the 16 Candles because of HBO and so on, because it was a year before.
Yep.
So I wanted to see this, but what I remember is it was rated R, and so I really wasn't allowed to go. And I did see it when I was young. Once it came out on the old VCR tape, I did see it. I do not remember being bored. I think I liked it right away, but it sure is different. It is very different from 16 Candles in the tone and the feel of it. But what always made it interesting to me is that because it's rated R, I always felt like it made it seem like it was forbidden, like I was going to get something out of this movie that I shouldn't. And then you watch it, and really, there's a few F words, but there's really not much. Like 16 Candles has full out nudity in it, and that was PG.
That was PG. Yep.
Yeah.
I remember
So
thinking that I was going to get something many times, and I didn't get nothing.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's because it's just a more mature themes or because they smoke pot in it or if it's just because of the F words. But really, it doesn't feel much like a forbidden movie. But as a younger kid, the way I watched it was like, oh, this is really deep. It's rated R. Maybe I don't totally understand these characters, but I am into something here that is above me. And then, you get older and you start, like you said, you start to understand it better and get more connected to it for real. But that was my thing, was that like I couldn't go to it in the theater, but I did see it, but the whole R rating just kind of threw me. But I did like it. I don't remember not liking it, but definitely noticing how different it was from the other teen movies that I was used to and, did not have that same comedy. I expected it to be 16 Candles too, when that's what I thought I would watch.
Right.
And it's obviously nothing, but you got half the same cast and everything, but no, it's nothing like that. So
that's the other thing, is that when we say nothing happens, and it's not really a pure comedy movie either. I mean, there are funny moments.
I don't think
in
it's
the
a
movie.
comedy movie at all.
16 Candles. I mean, that's a funny movie.
Yes.
Whereas this one, when you're a kid, like 10, 11 years old or whatever, it doesn't, like, at that age, it didn't keep my attention as well as other movies. There's no action and there's little comedy.
I expected it to be a comedy and it wasn't, but I think I still liked it. But it's a drama with a few funny parts in it. How about you, Giff? It wasn't on NBC, so maybe you saw it early.
The first time I saw it was on Betamax.
Oh my god!
And,
you're kidding.
Yes.
He's making fun of me.
Yes, as opposed to the VHS tapes.
VCR tape.
VCR
yes,
tapes.
VCR
Get it right.
tapes. So a lot of movies that I saw when I was younger were due to Saturday night on ABC. They'd have a late night movie that would come on like at 10:30, I believe, after the news. So using the VCR tape, I would record a lot of these movies, and I'm pretty sure that's where I saw this for the first time. So it was edited. Yep. And I don't really remember thinking, like, because again, it kind of like what Pete said, it's not a comedy. So for a young kid, it doesn't speak to what you're going through at that time. I mean, we were in elementary school when it came out. I probably saw it when I was 11 or 12. So it didn't really speak to anything I was going through quite yet.
But you were a heavy drinker, though, so the drug scenes probably affected you.
Yeah.
That's right.
Here we go.
Right.
Yeah.
Always in detention too.
Yes,
Mr. Fulton.
Yeah, Mr. Fulton would send me to detention quite a bit. So as in subsequent viewings, though, once you're older and the themes of it touch home with you, and that's one of the things I really like about this movie is that even though it is from 85, the themes I think still resonate today. You still have cliques, you still have, the jock and the burnout and the recluse and the nerd and the princess. I think you'd find those people in any typical high school today. And even though there's some language in it that dates it to the 80s, I still think you would kids today would find things that are relevant.
Well, speaking of that, so I mentioned this when we did this the first time too, but I watched this twice last year with my kids because when the pandemic hit, we had a big movie day. Twice last year, the Estadio Olimpico. So we watched it. We had a big movie day. You're trying to find things to do when everybody's locked at home, and we watched this movie. And then it was only a couple months later we started this podcast up. Like, not, it wasn't out to the public, but like we started like creating it. And so I watched it again for this, and the kids watched it again with me. But what makes this movie endure, like you said, is it's timeless. Really, there's parts that date it, but the themes and the characters, they don't go away. And so my daughter, we're watching it, and she loves the show on the Disney Channel, Victorious, and it's been on Netflix. And she's like, there's this episode of this show on there. And so, and Ariana Grande's on this show when she was a kid. So I don't know if you ever saw the show. But so after the movie, we watched it, and like, it was a great episode. It was really funny and really well done. But like, she's like, oh, now I understand all this because she'd seen the movie. And I'm sure there's countless other, not so much spoofs, but like homages to this movie in other shows out there like that the kids have seen, and that's why they know it. And so that was just one example, and it shows how it's had this impact across generations ever since it came out. And like 16 Candles, which I loved, that one doesn't really hold up the same way because it's a little bit more just a, it's funny and everything, but this one actually has things that I think people relate to no matter what.
Yeah.
So you nailed it, Gif.
Thank you. That's what I do.
So shall we get into the movie?
Yeah.
All right.
That's what we're here to do.
So I found it interesting how boring the credits are. I mean, it's playing that great song, but the credits are just the words on the screen and nothing else. And you'd think there'd be something else going on there, because that does not grab your young audience at all.
What are you expecting in credits? Credits are always words on a screen.
Well, but they usually run like during the movie, or it's literally like a black screen, and that's all it is.
It does run for a while, yeah. But
it's just
interesting. It does have that interesting quote.
And then it goes into the quote. You want to talk about that, Pete?
And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. A quote by David Bowie.
Yes. And so at the end of this episode, we're going to talk about music, because it fits in well, because this movie has many great music choices. And then you got David Bowie there too. So anything you want to say about that quote, Pete?
No, I thought the quote was enough.
Well,
can't improve on Bowie.
I thought
he said it.
Even though I've watched this 3 times in the last year, I kind of forgot that it starts out with the letter being read at the beginning, that they also read at the end. And the one thing that stands out to me there is how he says, "You see us how you want to see us," and like they kind of get offended by that. But I always find it, because the kids are doing the same thing. They all see each other,
right?
And they do the same thing to each other, and so. It's just like, again, it's not like unique to the principal. That's just what people do. And so,
well, and just on a quick side note, I think that's one of the refreshing things about going off to college, because you can break from that mold that people have put upon you.
Correct.
That some things may be true, but at the same time you're kind of pigeonholed sometimes, and now you've got a fresh start. You go off to college and get a clean slate.
It's exactly how I felt. That's literally how I felt when I went to college.
Nobody needed that clean slate more than Pete did.
That's right. Now's the time for a fresh start.
I had 2 early comments on Judd Nelson.
Yes.
Okay.
Please. And again, I guess I've noticed it, but it just caught me off guard. His nostrils are really something. Like, his nose is kind of weird looking.
I've noticed that too. Did you also notice he's 18 years old and he's already got like a fleck of gray hair?
I have not noticed that, actually.
He's 24.
He's 24.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I assume that was a character choice, because he's kind of got an interesting style. So I didn't know if that was maybe something that, he just did as the character. But yeah, I noticed that as well, as having the little splotch.
He's just under so much stress that he's already getting gray hair.
And there are guys in high school that are even already start to lose their hair. I mean, there was a guy that played basketball for Lake Benton that was like half bald, wasn't there, back in the day?
Yeah, I remember.
I feel like so. Doesn't mean he's not still fitting.
Well,
But
and
he had
Zingelman went white pretty quick too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
Not
of the
in high
first
school though.
one of the first really funny lines in the movie was by him. I love when he's looking at the book and he says it wrong and he says, "Mole really pumps my nads." But then
it had a lot of those kind of
is when Brian follows up with, "I love his work."
Right. In my opinion, Brian has some of the best lines in this movie. The way he delivers them so dry is just so perfect.
So this is later, but since we're talking about it, my other favorite one of his is later on when Ali Sheedy says, "I'm a nymphomaniac," and there's just a short pause, and he goes, "Are your parents aware of this?" That's a great one too.
That totally would have been me. I think all of us probably. If you had to pick one character,
if we picked who we were all Brian for the most part.
We were two of us at least were for sure.
Yeah.
See, and I saw myself in all three of the male characters because obviously I got good grades. I cared about my grades.
Good for you.
Not to the point where I'd bring a gun to school because I couldn't get a lamp to turn on. And not that I was a great athlete like Andrew, but I was in sports. And, I like to, maybe have a little bit of fun that might have not been necessarily legal for a person of my age. So I saw a little bit of that as well.
Right on the button with that.
Not to the extremes that, like I say, these three characters had.
Stereotypes.
Right. But there's a little bit of everything. And I think, coming from a school of our size, a high school of our size, you really did intermingle with a lot of different groups. Like, we were in choir, right? All three of us were in choir. We're all in sports. We all got good grades. I mean,
I saw myself as a Emilio Estevez, but I was definitely Anthony Michael Hall more. So
you were the Emilio Estevez of the golf team.
Well, that is
as
true.
Far as skill.
That's
true.
For sure true.
Wow. Yeah. Well said.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You picked him up. Gifford, you played football and basketball, so you guys
played basketball is a very loose term. Let's be honest.
You played basketball more than I played football, so think about that.
Yeah.
And
pretty close, but yeah, he did.
The one thing that did bother me, games that I got in was 21 or 29 to nothing. So I'm just gonna say that games that I played in, we won by an average of 29 points.
Well, you were the difference then.
Absolutely true. That's right.
Obviously, yeah.
Yep.
The one thing that did bother me about this movie, and I don't know if it's the beginning of it, and Pete, you may agree with me on this one. How often have you seen a show or a movie where the nerd character has the name of Brian?
Yeah, that's my whole. It's my whole life.
It seems pretty
Just in case
common.
People haven't caught on yet. Giff and Pete are not their first names. They are both named Brian.
Yes.
That's right.
So that was always something I dealt with growing up. Was the dork is always called Brian. The other thing that I found funny with this film is in the end, so Brian, the nerd, ends up not having a love interest, and he also
as they left the building there, though, I kind of felt like he was supposed to hook up with the janitor. Because they all walk by in couples, and they had a little connection there, and it's almost like those two are supposed to be kindred spirits. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and he does the work for everybody else. He's the one who ends up writing the essay. So in the end, they, take advantage of him, and he has to do the work that was set forth at the beginning.
But he's proud to do it.
That would have been He's happy to do it. He was happy with himself. You could see his reaction.
I love when he gets a little pat on the shoulder.
Yep. Yeah. So he was very proud of himself, and he would have done it anyway, but I just thought it was weird that at the end, after all these breakthroughs that they've made, these strides they've made to come together, in the end, none of the girls are interested in him, and they still ask him to do their homework.
That's story of Pete's life. Actually, they wouldn't ask Pete to do their homework because he wasn't very smart in high school.
Oh, come on.
No, that's
He was
right.
he was our politician, class
That's
president.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
One thing, going back to more in the beginning, because it starts really early, but one thing that I view much differently now as an adult is Mr. Vernon, the principal. I mean, you know who he is, and he's a jerk and everything. But I think as a kid, I almost think I viewed him more as almost as a comic character. Maybe I'm not sure. But now, as an adult and a teacher myself, he is a horrible, horrible human being. He's an asshole, and there are a few scenes where he seems conflicted with the way that he interacted with the kids. Like when he goes through the whole thing with Bender there at the beginning, and he says, "I got you for 2 months," and he's all cocky, but then he goes out into the hall and he like pauses, and he looks like he really like is, oh God, why just like he doesn't want to do that, but he can't help himself. But he's just, I look at my job and how I need to interact in the way that we're supposed to interact with kids now compared to
Right.
1985 too. And it's just he just does everything wrong and he just can't help himself. But then again, you have those days where you can't help
Just
it.
frustrated.
A kid
losing control.
pushes your button the wrong way and you do it the wrong way and you know you did it the wrong way, but you couldn't help it. So I can sympathize with him in that way. But overall, he is just terrible. So
Well, and the thing that I didn't understand is, does he want to be there for 2 more months on a Saturday?
good
that was
question.
my question I had written down here. And first of all, is Saturday detention, is that a real thing in schools?
I think
like
it
that?
has been at times in certain
Maybe
places.
maybe it was back then and not now. Or
I mean, I don't know that it's a major thing,
I
but I
have
think it
no
exists. And then it's like, so I kind of play his character in the movie. I kind of related to what I would think his career is like too, because in the movie he starts out all over him. He won't leave him alone. He's putting down all the rules, but halfway through the movie he just kind of disappears.
Right.
And they just run
Yeah.
wild, and he basically gives up and doesn't care. And even at the
Right.
end when they leave, you'd think he'd come in and say something, but he's not even there when they leave at the end.
Yeah, he doesn't dismiss them.
And that's the way I kind of look at his career. He came in all fired up to make a difference, and like he even says in the movie, they beat him down, and he's given up, and now he's just not good at his job. But he does make $31,000 a year and has a home,
And he has a home.
and you're not going to ruin that for him. So.
Right. Is that how much you
That's
make now,
funny.
Brad? 31K. You
I
have
make
a home,
exactly
so you must.
$31,000 a year. Yes.
Nice, excellent, good for you, buddy.
flat fee.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys had any comments about Vernon, but he was one that really stood out because as he's one I kind of view differently as I grow up, and particularly with my job.
Well, and you need his character in this because, a common theme in movies is that you need to have a common
he's the
villain,
villain.
I guess,
Yeah.
for
He's
the
heavy.
kids.
He's the
Yeah,
antagonist, as we would say
right.
in English class.
Thank you,
Kind
Mr.
of.
Sorensen.
One of them, anyway. Maybe he's not the main one, but
So the kids obviously are all against him, so he's the unifying force that helps to bring them together. The one thing I found interesting in this is that, to me, Bender is obviously the straw that stirs the drink. He's the one who starts talking. He's the one that gets the conversation rolling. He seems insightful. I mean, if it wasn't for him, the other ones would have literally sat there all day and just not said a word.
True.
But because of him, everything really gets moving. And I thought he was, a very independent thinker. He's very insightful. He'd bring up topics. He'd see through the kids' facades and try to get to a deeper point. So even though he's supposed to, be the guy who's not going to make anything of himself, he does seem to be a thinker, to have a mind of his own.
Quite often the case with kids like that is that for whatever reason they've gone that direction, but they have all that potential and they are very smart, and for whatever reason some factors got in the way, and in his case, it was mostly his home life, and
right.
So, and that's one of the sad, tragic things you see again as a teacher, and sometimes you just can't even do anything about it, and that's depressing.
Sometimes they do, though. Sometimes they do come out of it and do well.
That is true. Maybe his newfound love affair with Molly Ringwald will put him on the right track.
Oh, he's pawning that earring as soon as he leaves the. He's going to get some cigs and some pot. He's pawning that bad away.
So shortly after this, it kind of skips ahead to lunch pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some questions that started to pop up for me here that you might have noticed too, but I found it interesting that they all brought their lunch, but for some reason they needed drinks. And then he goes to get the Cokes, and it's like, so who paid for these Cokes? It was just kind of odd that
maybe they're free in the teacher's lounge.
No, they went to the pop machine.
No, they went to the teacher's lounge. That's where Vernon sent them.
All right, so I guess I saw it differently. So that was one, and then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. But when Bender's in the gym, he's wearing one tennis shoe with his boot on the other foot. It's like, where did that come from and why? And then skipping ahead even later, and my son actually noticed this is Andrew is wearing like 10 layers. It's like he comes out of that room and he just takes shirt after shirt off, and like, how many layers was that guy wearing? So
he was
just
trying
some
to
little
cut
random
weight.
things that made me go to quote CNC Music Factory.
Andrew's a wrestler, so he was trying to cut weight. He's sweating off pounds while he was in detention. That's my guess. So that's where I'm going to take that one. Going back to lunch. Going back to lunch, one of my favorite lines that Brian had is when Brian's unpacking his lunch and Bender hops over there and like goes through his entire lunch and talks about how all the food groups are represented. And he goes, did your mom marry Mr. Rogers? And Brian looks at him and goes, no, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, that's another. He's got so many good lines.
I mean, it's just, and it's so dry and matter of fact. He just looks at him like, no, Mr. Johnson. Just awesome. And then when they're talking about, I think it was early on, Bender was asking him if he was a virgin, and he said something. Bender asked him, well, when have you ever gotten laid? He goes, I've laid lots of times.
I've laid many times. As a kid, I think one of my favorite things in the movie was during the lunch when just Ali Sheedy's whole lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That was just, I thought that was hilarious as a kid. Also, the dandruff that she sprayed on her picture to create the snow. Those were two things that made a young Brad laugh and think was really funny.
Yep. Young Brad sitting home on Halloween night watching Breakfast Club.
Well, no, Pete, you're forgetting that this came out February 15th, so it would have been after his Valentine's date stood him up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to you and me, Gifford, getting all those.
Yeah. Yep. The Bryans were out and about having a good old time. All the two dorks out on the town. So did you want to talk a little more about the movie? Because I got a couple fun facts.
Well, yeah, we're not done with the movie yet.
Okay. I got fun facts too. But
shortly after lunch, they run through the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that scene. I brought up the shoe, and I love the gym scene. I love how he says, "I'm thinking about trying out for a scholarship."
That's and he kind of does his little dance a little bit when he's doing that.
And then when they're running, another great song in this movie is Wang Chung, "Fire in the Twilight." It's a great song, and it's so perfect there as they're running through the school, and that really stood out to me last night as I watched this again. So there's all that, and then it kind of goes to the drug scenes at the end. So we should probably just talk about like how the movie ends and how they all are talking to each other and what we think about that. So the drugs, I notice, are really a roller coaster. They help bring them all together, but they go from like getting all happy to then they're yelling at each other, to then they're sharing, and then they're yelling again, and it's just
That's what drugs do, Brad.
it's all over the place there. But they do
Haven't
help
you ever
them
seen
come
The
together.
Room?
They
That
do
happens in
provide
The
a
Room,
common
too.
thing to get involved, because even Brian is all over that. So
Well, and what I found interesting with the beginning of that with the drugs is Bender has them. He goes off. There's no peer pressure. He's not asking other people or like
they just start to
taunting
follow him.
people. Everybody else just goes, you know what? That sounds good. I think I'll go try that. And that's the other nice thing about Bender. He shares.
Oh, that's
Like-
what I was going to say about him. So in the gym there, the reason why he's there alone is because he takes the fall so they can all get
Right.
back. He
He's the
shares
leader
his
of the group.
drugs.
Yep.
And there was one other thing I wrote down too. Oh, well, he shows them around the school too before they get in trouble. He takes them out and like wants to like show them a good time. So he is a very giving and willing person, even though these people he pretty much hates at first.
He takes the fall because he knows that it's not going to change any opinions of him anyway.
Right.
He looks at the other ones and they still have a reputation or whatever, but he knows that he's just already
But if he was a
screwed,
real
so-
jerk, he would want to take them down with him, and he wouldn't care about any of that. So he's
right.
He's got a heart.
Yeah.
To me, he has the most depth of any of the characters in this.
Oh, I agree. And I
movie.
think you put it great that I never thought of that before. If he wasn't in this movie, I mean, it would be four people sitting doing nothing. It would be a terrible movie. So he really is everything.
Well, and in that final scene where they're all sitting around, you know, you come to realize why some of them are in detention. And I found it interesting that Molly Ringwald, when they asked the question, what happens on Monday?
Oh, yeah. I want to talk
Are
about this
all of
part.
us going to be friends? Ringwald is the only one who gives to me an honest answer.
Exactly. They rip on her, but she is, you know, she's right.
Yeah.
I mean, except
She
for
is.
like Brian and what's Ali Sheedy's name?
Allison.
They would be nice, but that and she said that. She said you would be because it is, but she's totally right. And
Because
that's
you want to be where we're at, and he calls her conceited, and I don't think they would do it necessarily out of meanness, but
No.
just out of convenience. They have their lives, they have their friends. It's
the way it is.
comfortable, and they're just going to slip back into the same roles they had before. Sure, that now they understand these kids, and maybe they have, you know, like Andrew when he was talking about, you know, taping the kids' butt cheeks together. You know, he obviously shows contrition and understands how that kid would have felt, but it's that's the way it is. Like, you're just going to get back into your convenient, comfortable situation when Monday rolls around. So yeah, she got ripped on, but to me, she's the only one telling the truth.
I agree. There was a time before, so when he yells at her, I get why Bender's yelling at her because it sounds terrible. But there was a part before that, right after she did the lipstick.
Yeah.
He does the slow clap and rips on her there too. And I didn't really understand like what set him off that time. Why did he decide to just, because he really gets at her.
I think he was still kind of on the point of using her physicality as a weapon. Because, I mean, if you stick, first off, wearing lipstick, you could say is, you know, a way to be more attractive. And then you stick it in your cleavage in order to put it on. That's going to, you know, draw attention. So, you know, I think he was still kind of stuck on the whole, you know, where she's a tease. But she really doesn't think she is. And, you know, he was still all over. I think he was still.
I guess. I just don't think those things are related, though. But then again, he's a dumb kid, and that doesn't have to make any sense. So.
Well, and that was the other thing, too. I think sometimes they made bigger deals out of some things. I didn't really get why. You know, it was almost like they were looking to be angry at each other sometimes.
Which people do. People look to create their own drama.
Yes. Oh,
and that's absolutely, especially in high school, in a situation like that, that's absolutely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about Bender being so important. I will say, though, I do think Ali Sheedy is just fantastic in this movie. And she really helps hold it all together too. Even when she's not talking, she has a great presence that really you love her as a character, and she's so interesting to look at. And I really like it at the end because she's so like self-conscious. But when she comes out after the whole makeover and crap,
Mhm.
and Brian double takes and looks at her, and she smiles and she whispers thank you to him, I just thought that was really nice too. And you can tell that she, you know, I mean, it was just those two are sweet because they are the nice people in the
Mhm.
group,
Well,
Mhm.
and I
and I
think
like
the
that little
thing,
connection.
I think what she brings to the movie is an air of mystery. Like you
Right.
know who these other characters are pretty quickly,
True.
but she's this person sitting in the back who doesn't say anything, and it's fun to kind of unravel her character. She's not forthcoming with anything, and
That's another.
and then when
Sorry.
she's talking, you know, about being a nymphomaniac, she's a compulsive liar as well. So, her character is a little takes a little while longer to understand, and I think that adds something to it.
And that's another question I have about the movie too. Then is when she says that I don't even need to be here, which I think she's serious about that.
I think she is too.
Then why doesn't Vernon seem confused when she's there and like make a comment about it? Shouldn't he be like, "What are you doing
Yeah,
here?
what do you?
You should go home." So just another one of those little, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
unimportant observations, but
But that may lead into your observation about how he's just given up. He's like,
he
whoever
doesn't.
shows
Yeah,
up, they're in detention now, and
good point.
yeah.
He doesn't even probably know or care.
Keep track, right?
Just a couple more things at the very end that I have.
Mhm.
So of course they get together, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Although I looked closer this time, and during the movie, I saw more like signs that, like, especially Claire was interested in him, like just nonverbal things. And same with, especially Andrew, he
Mhm.
seems really interested in Allison.
Allie. Yeah.
Uh, Not right away when she's in the back, but once they start to talk, even like he's really into her. So I kind of get that, even though I'm not a huge fan of them all coupling up at the end. It seems a little bit forced.
Contrived.
But the other thing that I find just really awkward is watching them all like make out outside while their parents are right there in the car, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, really? You don't even know these people, and now they're going to ask you all these questions, and it just seemed really awkward. Just as a watcher, I felt awkward. So I do love the very end when he's walking through the field and the thing plays, but the one thing that
It's
I'm
a
not a huge
classic
fan of is
ending.
the why do we have to couple and everything, and we've already made it pretty clear they're probably not going to be nice to each other. So I mean, are these little relationships? I mean, why even bother? But who knows?
Well,
You've got to
and for
have
our
some sort of. It brings more closure to the movie, I think, rather than what are they just going to scatter, walk all, walk
I
their
don't
own
know.
ways and be done? I don't know.
I think so. I think that would be fine to do it that way. They could all say goodbye, and have a nice little like ending together, but then realize
Group hug.
we're not going to be friends on Monday, and so we're moving on now again. And then they read the letter, put fist in the air, done.
right.
So
Well, and for our listener out there, Brad is not a fling kind of guy. He's a long-term relationship guy. He doesn't like this idea of just a quick little fling on a Saturday.
I don't think that's
He's
it.
looking for commitment.
That's true, but I don't think that's why.
One other Brian line that I loved in this was when it comes to light that he has a fake ID.
Yeah.
And they
Fucking
ask
vote.
him what he needs a fake ID for. And of course, you're thinking, so you can buy beer. No. Brian goes, so I can vote. Like,
And he's
and
68
again,
years old.
yeah, he's 60. Yes, he's 68. But again, just so dry. And he says it so matter of factly, like, well, of course, so I can vote. It's just so hilarious.
That's a good one.
Well done.
And then I
Different.
guess. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No, I was just going to ask him to start off with his fun facts, but if you have
Okay.
another comment to add.
Well, I wanted to talk, and we can do. I don't know if you want to do before or after the fun facts, but just like the overall tone and theme of the movie.
Mhm.
Do you want to do your fun facts first? shall we?
No.
Sure. Then we'll wrap it with the
Okay.
tone.
Okay, go ahead,
All right.
Diff.
Well, the first thing I have is that in 2016, this film was selected to the National Film Registry for preservation.
Beautiful.
Congratulations, you did it.
Yeah. Ringwald was asked to play Allison, but she convinced Hughes to let her play Claire. And some of the other actresses of note that auditioned for Claire were Robin Wright, Jodie Foster, and Laura Dern. And also that Estevez auditioned to be Bender, but they didn't have anybody for the jock role, so they put him as the jock. And then Nick Cage and John Cusack auditioned for
yeah.
Bender.
Nick Cage
But-
would have been so great.
Yeah, right? Hughes didn't think Cusack was menacing enough to play Bender.
No, he's
True.
not. He's a nice guy.
Right.
As we'll get to
Yeah.
next week.
I completely agree. I agreed with that. I thought Nick Cage would have been awesome.
Yeah. If you're going to go
It's
with
like
another
Tom-
character, another actor besides Judd Nelson, Nick Cage is the way to go
Yes.
there.
Yep.
Cusack
and then,
is like Tom Hanks. He's just not a mean guy, and
No. I just had two more. Rick Moranis was cast as the janitor,
Oh yeah, we knew
but
that
left
one.
Yep.
due to creative differences. And then this was shot concurrently with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So they,
Oh yeah, because they used the same building.
they used the same building,
school.
and to save time and money, Hughes filmed both of them at the same time. So
There's
those
a
are
theory.
Yeah.
You had the same facts that I did with those last two. There's actually a theory that like some people think that those two movies take place in the same universe, like
Yeah,
it's the
of course
same
there
high school,
is.
same time,
Sure.
and it's like just different students at the same high school.
People with too much time on their hands.
Well, technically, they did happen at the same time in the same place. So
Yeah,
I'm
because
all
there are
for it.
posters on the wall that you can tell are for the same. If you look closely, I don't know, it's like Go Tigers or something like that, which is in both movies. It's
Okay.
not Tigers, but it's something like that. Because it is the same school, it's the same signage.
Well, and I couldn't help but think at the beginning of the movie when they show the school as they're, all showing up for detention, and it says Shermer High School. Anybody else think of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back? When
No, but
that's where they wanted to go, is to Shermer
Yeah.
High School, because lots of fine honeys there, and
yeah.
they just want to get to Shermer, Illinois.
So did you have any more fun facts, Pete, or did he have yours?
He covered all mine. I just had
Okay.
the Nick Cage, John Cusack, and Ferris Bueller one.
So
I do have one more. I do have one
Oh
more.
boy, here we go. I
Are
can't
you
wait.
ready for this?
I am.
No,
Anthony
no,
Michaels.
give me 3 seconds. Okay, no, I'm ready.
Anthony Michaels Hall's real
Anthony
mom
Michaels
and
Hall.
sister.
Park and Rec.
Anthony Michael Hall's
That's where that S
real
went.
mom and sister. Forget it.
Okay,
I
Pete,
hate
you're gonna
you
have to
guys.
start that one over because Anthony Michaels.
All I
Hall.
was saying, Anthony Michael Hall's real mom and sister were in the movie playing the roles of it when they drop him off at the beginning.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, and if you're gonna go with that, John Hughes too is in there as
As one of the dads.
Brian's dad. Wait a minute.
Is he?
So they dropped him off, the mom and sister, then, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
Janet
it was,
John
yeah.
Hughes that picks him up.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He's in
Huh.
it.
Okay. And I thought I read somewhere that they were also in another movie with him as his real mom, as his mom and sister. Shoot, I should have written that down. But it was another Hughes. Weird Science, I think.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Oh,
Well, that came
maybe
out the
that's-
same year too, so
Yeah.
maybe
So-
they shot that at the same time as well.
Yes,
Wow,
Hughes is
same
very busy.
universe.
Well,
So,
let's wrap her up with the theme and the
yeah,
overall
so I think
feel.
we should just talk. So I just think, and again, as I watch it as an adult, this movie is it's really depressing. It is so
Mhm.
bleak, the view of parents and families. Like
Mhm.
the way they talk is like every kid's life is miserable and every family life is terrible. And you know what? That's not the way I don't think any of us grew up. It's it's not that bad for everybody. It is bad for a lot, and you go through stuff up and down, but it's so bleak, and it as an adult it's kind of sad and depressing to watch because it is true too, but like there's good stories out there as well. I see them every day, and my life I think our families would be in that same thing. So that's one thing that I notice more now. But you also brought up earlier, Pete, how this movie has nothing happen, and it's really amazing that kids and the target audience would get into it so much because it's basically seven actors. They're in one room, nothing happens, it's all dialogue, and you have to sit there and pay attention. But when you have great characters and stories to tell, then even teenagers can follow along and get into it and find something to connect to. So, on one hand, it's amazing at how well it connects you, in my opinion. But on the other, as an adult, it's like, holy crap, this is a little more depressing than I think real life is.
Yeah.
Now, I know some
Well,
kids' lives
yeah,
are that bad, but
there
they
are.
make it sound like everybody's terrible. Even
Well,
Brian wanted to kill himself. I mean, come on.
and these
Well, the
these kids'
teenage.
homes lives are so bad. That's why they're in detention, Brad. That's why. That's everything. But it does,
Yeah, I
they do
guess.
make it out to where it is kids against adults at every level, at home, at school.
Right.
You know, Carl's the only cool adult in the world.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it is definitely um, bleaker than a lot of other Hughes movies, but
Correct.
the themes connect so well across generations that's why it's such a fun movie to watch. Again, I enjoyed it
Right.
watching
And
this.
like you said, it continues to endure today with
Mhm.
younger generations. Like they know it. You can reference things, and a lot of kids are going to pick them up right away. Even if they don't know the movie, they probably still know the reference. And then if they ever see the movie, they'll be like, "Oh my God, I get that now." Like my daughter.
Yeah.
Pete,
Pete, did you
final
have anything to add?
thoughts?
Well, just that in addition to what you said, it's also their teenage years. They're still trying to figure out who they are. It's a very difficult time in your life for a lot of people, right? And they're self conscious for different reasons, and and so that's kind of why they put each other into different, I guess, buckets, I guess, and that's on top of their family lives, and they are troublemakers and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. That's all I got to say.
So we all still like the movie?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it again because I'd watched it twice, but I'm glad I did. It's good. Don't get sick of it. All right, so we mentioned John Hughes a lot. So we made lists of our favorite John Hughes movies, and it doesn't have to be movies he directed. It can be movies he wrote, directed, or whatever. If he was
Yep.
related to the movie, you can throw it on your list. So, um, we'll do that first, and then we'll wrap it up with music because, as we said, the Breakfast Club is full of great music.
All right.
I th- I think I said, by the way, probably in the vacation month, but John Hughes, nobody, in my opinion, is better at writing movie or making movies about just everyday people. And so it's just like all of the movies are just normal people. There's nothing necessarily spectacular about them. You can watch those movies and say, that's me or that's my family and
Mhm.
my friends, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just different, weird, funny things that happen to these people. But that's just
Weird
what I want to
Science
say
might
as
be
far as
kind of a
that
outlier,
was,
a
that
little
was
bit more of
me.
a fantasy type, but you're
Yeah,
right. Most of the time
that was
they
me.
are. What'd you say?
That was me.
Yeah, that was Pete.
Oh yeah, but most of them are very family oriented and just your run of the mill average
Right.
people.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
All
So
right,
I'll start. I can start with my list if you
you
want me
do
to.
it.
All right. Coming in at number 5, your favorite movie, Brad. I had 16 Candles. Number 4, coming up, Thanksgiving season. We should do this one actually, but we're not going to. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
1987. I'm sure we'll get to it then.
Mm-hmm.
Underrated one that doesn't get talked about a lot, but one I remember watching it as a kid, and I saw it, I think, about a year ago. It was during the pandemic. We watched Mr. Mom.
Mm-hmm.
Michael
That's a
I
good
just
Keaton. We
watched
all
that
love Michael
recently
Keaton.
too, partially because we talked about it in our
Yeah.
Lost episode.
And then I bucketed the two together, Vacation / Christmas Vacation.
Wait a minute, what about European?
I left that off because technically John Hughes wasn't associated with that one. And it's a terrible, terrible movie.
Otherwise, it would have been on there.
That's right. And number one, I had Ferris Bueller.
All right, then.
Because for me, that's the movie that probably gives me the most memories. As much as I guess, between that and Christmas Vacation, I've probably seen Ferris Bueller about as many times as any other movie, and it's always fun every time. And the kids actually enjoyed that one too.
That is one that I have not watched for a long time, and I would like to watch again because I don't feel like I love it as much as a lot of people, but I do know I liked it a lot, and I just need to be reacquainted again, I think.
It'd be
Yeah,
worth
you
your
should.
time.
So speaking of that, I have that at my number 5 because I do know I like it, but I don't feel like it's not 16 Candles in the Breakfast Club for me. It never reached that level.
Okay.
I did have 2 honorable mentions. One was Mr. Mom, which I did rewatch, and it's funny. It's not as great as some of the others, but it's funny, and Michael Keaton is fantastic.
Michael Keaton's amazing.
It's a good cast again. And then I had Home Alone 2, which actually, I mean, I love Home Alone, and I watch it every single year, but I put it at my honorable mention, I guess. So Ferris Bueller was 5. Number 4, I put these at 4 because he didn't direct them, but I have Vacation and Christmas Vacation also put together. Number 3, The Breakfast Club. Number 2, I had 16 Candles because, like I said, I watched it more than any movie ever. But then later in the 80s, what I think is the best John Hughes movie came out, and it has Steve Martin in it, which we know how I feel about him. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is my number 1. That movie is, and it's so different because it's not about teens, and he did such a great job of doing the same thing with 2 guys, and it's just, God, that movie's good. It's so funny, it's so heartwarming, it's got it all. And so that's my number 1. And it's a better movie than 16 Candles too, so I think it's maybe the best movie of them all. Like, it's legitimately not just a comedy. I mean, it's a well-made, well-written, great movie, in my opinion.
That's another good point, is that John Hughes movies tend to have like a great finish, a heartwarming type finish as well.
Oh, yes. That one has a great, I cry every time I watch that movie. And you got the Neil, or not Neil, Paul Young, Every Time You Go Away. Oh my God, I can picture it right now. And he picks up he realizes that his wife is dead, and he goes back and he picks up the other side of oh my God, the movie's great.
It is.
Brad's about to start crying right now.
I could.
Well, let me cut in here while you take a moment, Brad, and wipe the tears from your eyes. So I got one honorable mention that hasn't been said yet. The Great Outdoors. Love that movie.
See, that's a movie that I thought I should love, and I just never did. Even as a kid, I just didn't think it was very funny.
Okay.
I love the scene where the bear jumps on him on the door. I mean, to me, that's the movie right there. But it just never connected with me like these other ones.
So my number 5, I got Ferris Bueller. Number 4, another one that nobody mentioned. I love this movie. Another John Candy classic, Uncle Buck.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen that in 30 years. I don't even. So
I haven't either.
Well, take some time.
Someday, I should watch it again. And I do love John Candy.
Mm-hmm. Another John Candy movie coming in at number 3, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And then my top 2, I put 2 Vacation and number 1 Christmas Vacation, but those are, you can put those either way. So that was my list.
You can go back about 10 episodes and you can hear our wonderful thoughts about those 2 movies on this podcast.
Yeah,
should.
Those are 2 of our finest moments right there, I think.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun.
All right, so The Breakfast Club has great music in it. It ends with a great song, Don't You Forget About Me, and everybody knows it right away. And so since it didn't really fit anywhere else this month, we figured this is the best time to cover our favorite albums, songs, or music of 1985. And again, we were all young, so it's probably not quite the same type of list as we would have 10 years later.
Right.
So here, I'll go first this time.
Okay.
So at number 5, I like to do albums more, so I just lumped a bunch of songs into number 5 that I really love, that I either knew that year or I knew later. So one, I'm a huge INXS fan, and the song Listen Like Thieves, or the whole album I think came out that year. Love that song. Simple Minds actually has a song I like more, Alive and Kicking, which came out that year. Such a great song. One of my favorite 80s songs of all time is Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. I will never get old of it. My daughter learned to play it on the piano this last year, and oh God, it's great.
I remember that video on Facebook.
Tears for Fears was a huge at this time shout, and Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Yep.
And of course, The Power of Love from Back to the Future by Huey Lewis, who I was a huge fan of at the time. I still am, but like at that time, I was Huey Lewis super fan.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some songs. At number 4 is an album that I did not get onto until many years later, but we discussed Chris Isaak. Go back and listen to that podcast. Speaking of it, that's one of our more popular podcasts, so don't miss out.
I tell a hell of a story.
That's what my wife said. But his debut album came out in 1985, Silvertone, so that's where he began. My favorite band of all time, REM, had their Fables of the Reconstruction album came out that year, so I did not get that till probably like 91 or 2, but it's a great album that I love.
You like REM?
Yeah.
I did not know.
When I first got into music, and especially buying CDs, I was all over the greatest hits and the classic rock. And 3 great classic rock greatest hits came out in 1985. Almost a Billy Joel double album that everybody owned.
Yep.
One was The Cars' greatest hits, and Bad Company, 10 from 6, with like Feel Like Making Love on it, and many other good songs. But I saved number 1 for the album that I did own and know and love in 1985 as a 9-year-old, growing up on a farm. John Cougar Mellencamp, Scarecrow.
Yep.
Love that. Had tape. Loved that tape. One of my favorite songs of his is Rain on the Scarecrow. It is just a straight up rocker.
Tape.
So I figured since I owned it then and loved it then, that should be my number 1.
Excellent.
I'm done.
Well, you hit on a lot of great ones there. I've got more just songs rather than albums. I didn't own a whole lot of albums. The one that I believe we had on tape and I listened to was 40 Hour Week by Alabama. Came out this year.
Big Alabama fan here.
Mm-hmm. Also, Whitney Houston's self-titled album came out this year, and How Will I Know, the song on that's one of my top 5 songs from that
goes
year.
All the way back to 1985.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody, of course, remembers the song of the year, We Are the World.
Sorry. Speaking of that, I had 2 other side notes. So We Are the World you mentioned, but this is the year of Live Aid.
Yep.
Which was huge, and everybody knows Queen from the movie and so many. It's also the year VH1 debuted, which again, that's one of the things I was able to actually get on our farm with our satellite dish. So those were 2 like big music like events or things that happened as well that year.
Sure. The other huge song from that year, the Super Bowl Shuffle, 85 Bears.
True.
Also a huge album that came out that year, David Hasselhoff's Night Rocker came out. And it's a big album when the 3 singles off of the album were released in 85, 87, and 89. So it's a banger of an album when
Speaking of the Super Bowl Shuffle, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I would be remiss if I did not quote for Dave, our co-host, his favorite line in the song, "I'm not here to feathers ruffle," which I think was that with the backup quarterback. I'm not sure. I remember who said it.
I
don't know, but I
can't player, and it's.
I can't think of that without thinking of the We Are Kickers one that was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, we kick a ball, we kick the ball. That
No
or
Green Day. No
it
Green
wasn't
Day.
as big at the time, but we all discovered the Los Angeles Rams Ram It video too later on, which
Yes.
is worse than the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
didn't get the airplay.
Fantastic in its own awfulness.
So I mentioned How Will I Know by Whitney Houston is one of my top 5. My other 4 top 5s, I don't really have them ranked. The Heat Is On by Glenn Frey.
Ooh, nice.
I also had Power of Love, Huey Lewis and the News. And then to round it out, I got a couple Dire Straits songs, Money for Nothing and Walk of Life.
Mm-hmm.
Loved those songs.
Got
So
it.
that was, I got a few more here, but I don't want to step on Pete's top 5 in case some of those are in there. So
Step on my top 5.
you go right ahead.
Finish us off,
I'm
Pete.
going to start it off with Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I also had Power of Love, Don't
Nice.
Come Around Here No More by Tom Petty.
Oh, yes, very good one.
And Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, and Take On Me by Aha.
Oh, yeah, Take On Me from
Aha.
85.
I think that came out in 84.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I found it in 1985 on Google.
Well, it was probably one of those that came out in 84, but it was really
But-
big on the charts in 85.
But charted high at 85.
Okay.
We've already covered your faux pas tonight with
It's gonna
Anthony
be
Michaels,
audited.
so we'll let that.
That
one
was-
go.
Yeah. Hey, Pete.
Hmm.
Pete, you get an extra in your top 5 now. Do you have another song you'd like to throw in there if we don't allow Aha?
That's good. Was this the year that Raspberry Beret by Prince came
Yes.
out? Some good Prince songs
Ooh,
came
well,
out.
good
that
call then. Way to be prepared.
year. So,
Yep. Let's Go Crazy
I throw
came out
backup
this
in
year.
there.
You totally redeemed
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Let's Go
but
Crazy.
there,
That
group
can't
all
be
the
right,
Prince
'cause-
ones.
Yeah.
Purple Rain's 84.
Well, it was released in 85.
There you go.
Really?
It counts.
Pretty sure. Well, did I just have a faux pas?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to fight about it. I just that shocked because it seems like Let's Go
We are
Crazy.
s-
I thought that was even like the first single too, but I could be
I'm
wrong.
looking her up. Well,
We
it
are
wasn't in my
so
top
screwed
5,
if
so I don't
this
get
show-
I don't get an extra one.
We are so screwed if this show gets audited.
Right? Oh my God, yeah. You are not.
All right, Pete.
Also, my favorite band in 1985 was Preacher Row. I think they were around, weren't they?
Well, they were alive.
They're probably just getting started. They knew each other, and
Maybe.
they probably performed together, like in school plays and church and whatever. But anyway, before I turn it over to Preacher Row, though, don't forget, go on to Apple Podcasts or your platform of choice and leave us a review. Interact with us on Twitter and Facebook. We'll try to interact back, like Mike Mills does every once in a while. So,
Speaking of REM.
yeah, he's contacted us a couple of times.
Yeah, we've been
So
stuck
if-
here on this same last review for a few weeks. So
We
somebody
need more.
come through for us and make us happy, please.
Hopefully, it's a 5-star review.
Oh yeah, well that's true.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Preacher Row. Let's go crazy.
Excellent.
All right, bye
See you guys.
everybody.
See ya.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Hands tied, tell me on my path. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I